gosh. Hey, how are you doing? The dogs are talking to each other. Oh, that's cool. So, welcome to my first screencast. Been intending to get these going for probably going back all the way to December. But, you know, hey, we're in April, so from a software development standpoint, I'm ahead of schedule. I'm shipping early. So, what I was going to talk about today is getting started with Powershell and Hyper-V, which this is kind of poorly titled because I'm going to assume you already know a little bit about PowerShell and a little bit about Hyper-V. PowerShell is the Windows command line. Yeah, there's the old CMD stuff. Don't use that. Use PowerShell. And then Hyper-V is Microsoft's virtualization software that's built into Windows. So the machine that I'm using right now is Windows 10 box, lots of memory, lots of processors. But my Microsoft Surfaces also run Hyper-V. And I think an i5 will even let you run a virtual machine. So these things are built into the operating system. What I'm going to talk about is how you use PowerShell to control Hyper-V so that you can automate tasks. What brought this about is, at least for me, what introduced me and got me thinking about automating all this stuff is the project I'm getting involved with is kind of DevOps-ish. It's not, but it is. Anyway, long story. I've been learning new tools like Puppet, Chef, Ansible, Jenkins. Geez, it's been mind-blowing, all the stuff that I've gotten introduced to. In these things, especially with Chef, I got introduced to Vagrant. What Vagrant is it's kind of a wrapper over virtualization software like Hyper-V or VirtualBox. The problem, though, is Vagrant doesn't really do Hyper-V very well. In particular, since I use Hyper-V, I needed base boxes that could run on Hyper-V. And the directions and the support for doing that was really weak, and it just got very frustrating. And then I started thinking, I was like, hold on, I've got Hyper-V, and the way that I make a base box right now, it's not automated. I sit down, I create a new virtual machine, I install the operating system and get everything configured the way I want. And then inside of Hyper-V, the management tool, you just export the box and store it somewhere, and then you can import it whenever you need. So essentially, I've just figured out I don't need this. So kind of kicked Vagrant off to the side. Don't mean to offend the Vagrant people. If you're running Mac OS X or you're on Linux, Vagrant rocks. Great support, everything's there, ready to go for you. You should be using it. But if you're running Windows, in my opinion, you can get away with all this stuff just using PowerShell and Hyper-V. And as far as the base boxes go, you're going to want to make your own anyway. And even if you're using Vagrant, you'll end up taking somebody else's machine and making changes to it, and then using that as your base. So it's just fact of life. So what am I doing? Well, the exciting piece to me in getting into this stuff has been that my background is I'm a software developer. I get used as a solution architect, which means I go in, talk to the client, collect, get the requirements that they want, collected and documented. I design the solution. I work with the developers in QA to get the solution built and then deployed. And it's the deployed part is where I'm kind of excited with this DevOps, Chef, Vagrant, all of these things is awesome because, I've always been very big on XP, extreme programming, which we now, for PC purposes, call Agile. I happen to be a Scrum Master. Well, one of the principles is constant integration, constant delivery. And the idea is that what typically the way projects work is I come in, I do my stuff, we write the code, QA finally signs off, and then we take this stuff and we hand it to some poor system operations people, and they've got to deploy it. And they're like, and it never goes smoothly. DevOps is trying to address that, and kind of the whole thing, and where Vagrant is exciting, is we can very quickly spin up our deployment environment, what we want it to look like in production. And depending upon how much work you want to put into it, you can make it, you could isolate a network using, in Hyper-V you can make a virtual switch, and you could have a network that exactly simulates the production. Right down to the IP addresses, you could deploy DNS servers, everything in there. I wouldn't do that, but you could. And you can find out, because it's the usual joke of, the developer says, but it works on my machine. Well, all of a sudden, you can create that deployment environment in a virtual environment, run all of your tests, and know that it works here, and what we're going to deploy it to looks exactly the same as this. As a matter of fact, you could take those VHDs and just put them on the server and just crack it open to the world. I mean, I don't know that clients shouldn't do that. So that's the exciting piece. So what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to very quickly spin up servers very quickly, and then be able to work with them and then throw them away. So in order to do that, I'm going to need to be able to do 5 things. I need to be able to import a VM image. So we talked about the base images, and I happen to have, because I use Hyper-V anyway, I have a bunch of base images that have always been using. So I need to be able to import those images into my live environment. I need to be able to start them up, shut them down, remove them, and then it'd be nice to be able to just connect to them with RDP. So let's go take a look at it. So here we are, got my machine. We'll start off. These are the templates I've already created. This is for some mono work. Never mind that guy. We'll go ahead. I have a Red Hat box that I'm going to be doing some work with. And what I've done is I've created a command. Let's see, let's switch over to the other command line. app. So what I've done to make my life easier is I've created a PowerShell function called import VM. Takes the name of what I want my VM to be, and it takes the name of the template that I want it to use to create my new VM. So in this case, I'm going to say create, just Red Hat work, and then use my Red Hat base as the template. So I can go ahead and just do, so we'll go import VM. Just like that. And one really nice thing about PowerShell, it's not case sensitive. So anyway, that little blue bar or green bar across the top just indicates that Hyper-V was busy at work creating my VM. So that's my command. Now I can go in and this get-vm will return a list of all of the VMs that I have on my machine. So you can see I had 3 up already, and then we just created Red Hat work, and it's turned off at the moment. So let's go ahead and start it. So start-vm, Red Hat work, and there it goes. So we can see Red Hat work is up. Now, I'm not that sophisticated of a Linux guy at this point, so I'm going to have to connect up this way. So I'm just using a Hyper-V console. But turns out Red Hat actually has support for RDP, which I'm going to have to get configured on here. So there we are. That's my Linux box. It's up. ls, let's see, cd. It's a stripped down minimal install so that I can add stuff to it later, depending upon what I need. It does have SSH configured, but like I said, at this point I don't need anything on here. From Windows, you can SSH from Windows. It's not built in. There's some packages that you can get to install. Anyway, I'm off course. So we've got the machine. We've started up. I just connected to it in a lazy way, since if you're connecting up on a console, if you're going to RDP to a machine, then you're doing manual stuff anyway. So now we want to stop the VM. It's just this, stop-VM. Any day now. So the Hyper-V extensions for Linux haven't been installed yet. So we'll get those put in later. And then I created a shortcut called remove VM, which one of the things that I'll get into shortly is when you spin up a new VM. So here's Red Hat Work. I have it putting a directory here. There's the hard drive. Inside the virtual machines directory, we have this file, vmcx. This thing has all the configuration information about this VM. All of these files are here. Now, if I do a remove VM, it will take the VM out of this catalog, and it won't show up anymore, but it will leave the files sitting here, and I don't want that. So I created a function called remove VM, which will go in. It takes the VM out of the catalog, and oops, wrong window, and it deletes the directory for me. So, and my goal is to be as absolutely lazy as possible. So to get started with, what I've done is I've created a Hyper-V module, and I'll put this stuff on GitHub, and I'll include it in the description so you can go download this so you can play around with it. Now, my import VM, maximize this, works by, as I showed you, you pass in the new name for your new VM and the template. On my machine, all VMs live on the D drive. This is where they get hosted. Those other two VMs get hosted elsewhere. They're not a part of this. All of the templates come from my E drive. So then I go in, I get that vmcx file that I was showing you. I go in, I locate it, and I set up a path to the config file. I then take and create a path to where I want the new VM to go. And I do a quick check here to make sure I'm not duplicating a VM. And this is where the actual work occurs. This command, import VM. What is involved here? Hold on, we'll just do this so it all fits on the screen. We give it the path to the VM config file, and if you were to run just this, it would bring up a VM, but it wouldn't copy the files or anything. It would just use that template directly as the VM and spin it up. Well, it wouldn't spin it up, but you'd be able to then start that. That'd be useful if you, for instance, if I want to go back and install the Hyper-V extensions for Linux so that Hyper-V has better control over the Linux box. that's how I'd actually import that VM. The rest of these parameters, VHD destination path, virtual machine path, smart paging file, and snapshot file path, all of these point to the same directory. And the reason that's where I want my virtual machines files to be located. These last two parameters are the important part, copy and generate new ID. Copy will copy the VHD file from the template, and then we'll also generate a new ID. Each virtual machine has a GUID associated with it, and if you don't generate a new ID, all of them have the same ID, and you spin up 3 copies or even 2 copies, things won't work very well. So you want to generate a new ID each time, and that's why I have this thing set up this way. So it executes this, oops, and then after the VM has been imported, I just rename it to the new name so that everything looks the way I want it to look. That's how difficult it is. I mean, it's taken me a while to explain it just because I have a particular way I want things done, and so I did it this way. The remove VM is very simple. Again, we have my base directory, so I go in, I tell Hyper-V to remove the VM. What the force does is it prevents PowerShell from requiring me to hit yes. It kills off the confirmations. After that's done, we do the same. We take and we delete the directory, and that's it. That's all that's involved for importing and removing VMs. The start and stop, they're just built in. Start-VM will start your VM. Stop-VM will stop your VM. This next command, RDP2VM, I just get the address of the VM. I'll show you that in a second. And then I start an RDP session with MSTSC, passing in the IP address of the machine that I've specified by name. Now I've got a couple of commands up here, and this is something I want to talk about for your own use. So I have the thing get VM IP addresses, and what it does is it goes through, gets all of the running VMs, pulls out the network adapter on each VM, and gives us back the IP addresses. So let's look at the output from that. So what we see here is we see the IPv3 address and the IPv4 address of each one of my VMs. We only want, in order for me to connect with terminal services, I just need the IPv3 address, which is what this other, what this guy does is I made this wrapper so I could just get for a single VM. So watch, get VM IP address, and we'll get workstation. So there it is, still got the 2. Now this is one of the things that's why I think PowerShell is the bomb. So each one of these things is an actual object that PowerShell has and it can manipulate. It has one parameter called VM name, and has another, well, property, not parameter, property, IP addresses. And IP addresses is an array. Again, another reason why this is cool. I don't have to worry about capitalization. So I just want the first IP address. So, arrays in PowerShell start at the first position is 0. So you start counting from 0. So there it is. No fuss, no muss, no, in shell or bash, you're having to, take and use regular expressions and trim strings and do all sorts of nonsense. PowerShell, it's all object-oriented, so you just go in and you grab the properties off the object, which, again, I think is really cool. So anyway, I have waffled on for a really long time. I don't like how long this is, but hopefully this is valuable to you. I hope you liked it. Please share it with your friends, comment if you have questions, if there's more information I should provide that I've not indicated I plan to do in the near future, or if you want to encourage me to make the near future nearer. I mean, we're only 4 months behind where I thought I'd be. So anyway, that's it. Enjoy. Happy PowerShelling. I hope you do some really cool stuff with this and go way beyond where I've started from, because I'm just starting here. There's a lot more ground that can be covered. So have a good one, and I'll see you later.